Can I ask about another issue? We're done with this one.
Am I allowed, Patrick?
Sure. The Ohio Republican Party is asking you to revoke the directive on early voting and absentee and voter registration. Are you planning on changing that or clarifying or anything?
You know, Dave Daniels sent that letter to everybody but me. I haven't gotten it yet. I think he did. He must have sent it snail mail. And I think he gave me 48 hours. So time's clock's ticking. No, I'm not planning to rescind that directive. The legislature gave the Secretary of State the power to issue directives that 4 boards of elections do carry the force of law. And the reason that's done is because when you get to the finer points of elections and the processes, the legislative or the rulemaking process is cumbersome. I take the responsibility of issuing the directives very seriously, and this is the law that the legislature passed. This is the way that it was implemented under Secretary Blackwell, and I think it's unfortunate that they didn't understand the ramifications of what would happen when they passed House Bill 234, which, by the way, was sponsored by Kevin DeWine. But for this 5-day period, and it can be, I guess, maybe it's 6 days because of the extended registration deadline. If we were to apply the law the way that they wanted us to, it would mean that someone who registered to vote on October 6th, which is the last day to register to vote, would be ineligible to vote on Election Day, because that is not 30 days. The 30th day would be the 5th. And so, carrying this out to what they want would actually disenfranchise voters, and I think it would set up an equal protection problem, because someone who registered to vote 3 days before would be able to vote, and someone who registered on the last day would not be able to vote. And I don't think the state can come up with a rational basis for making that distinction between a class of voters, between 2 people in a class of voters. And the other thing that we look at is that from 20 days before the election, there is a challenge period for absentee ballots. And the question was raised by the Franklin County Board of Elections in a letter to us yesterday by the director and deputy director about the fact that if they allow voters to vote electronically at the early voting location or at Vets Memorial, they're going to have to flag those votes. So, because they're looking specifically at that challenge statute. So, to us, it seems clear that the law considers the vote cast when it's actually counted. I think that would put a voter who voted absentee and died before Election Day in a position to not have their vote counted. And you see that litigated differently from place to place. But as we see it, it's not a valid vote until it's actually, number one, determined to be considered cast by an elector who is eligible to cast that vote and actually counted on Election Day.
So the argument that he makes of this is not a qualified elector because this elector has not been registered for 30 days, he says it's illegal to give a ballot to somebody who's not a qualified elector. And you're saying by the time the vote is counted, they will be a qualified elector.
Right, right. And I think that's the way the law is meant to be interpreted. If you go back to previous law, we were looking at doing some legislative history. At one point in time, the gap was even bigger than 5 days. But we see how the landscape has changed is that at that point in time, absentee voting, you needed a specific reason for voting absentee. And now that we have no-fault absentee voting, which is what they passed, you have these greater numbers of people, and it's increasing as people see the convenience of this. And now there seem to be objections that weren't there before. So maybe I'll get sued. If I do, I'll defend it.